Hello, my friends. It is day 147, and we're reading First Chronicles chapter 26 through chapter 29, and we're also reading Psalm chapter 127. But before we get into the recap for today, we want to thank you for taking a moment to check out this video. Hopefully, you're finding the yearly Bible reading program to be enjoyable and inspiring as you read the Bible every single day. If you have not yet accepted the invitation, please take a moment to check out the description box below, and there you'll find the link that will take you directly to the YouVersion Bible app, where you can find a number of individuals reading the Bible and sharing their thoughts on what they're learning and reading every single day. So we'd love to have you a part of the group, and we'd love to see your feedback on what you're learning and discovering. So today we're reading in First Chronicles, and we also had a psalm that was considered in today's reading, one that was so fitting to what we're learning and discovering in the close of this book of Chronicles. And so as we see here, these are the last words of David. It's the period where David officially hands over the kingdom, if you will, to David. And David hands the kingdom over to Solomon, and we're able to see his impact on how he will eventually erect this temple that was in the heart of David. Probably more today than any other day, you're able to see just how influential David was to the architecture, the design, and also the organization, the procedure and policy of this temple. You can see that he names the officials, he divides the military commands, he establishes the gatekeepers, the officials, the musicians. Everybody is put in place to operate in this temple that David will not get to see built. But there's a critical point in today's reading that helps us understand what is exactly in the mind of David. And it's in chapter 28. It's where David commissions the people, and he commissioned Solomon. And if you read verses 2, really the whole chapter, but verses 2 to verse 10 gives us a lot of clarity as to what is actually happening here. Verse 8 is where he tells Israel, just like Moses told Israel whenever they were entering into the promised land, be careful to obey all the commands of the Lord your God, so that you may continue to possess this good land and leave it to your children as a permanent inheritance. That sounds exactly like what Moses told Israel as he was departing. But then he goes to Solomon. He tells Solomon, learn to know the God of your ancestors intimately. I love that word. Whenever I was reading there, I highlighted the entire verse, but the word that sticks out to me here is the word intimately. Like, you need to have this personal connection. I think this is what distinguishes David from all the other kings, is good, bad, or indifferent. He had that relationship, whether he was, making a mistake or whether he was doing something well. One thing is sure, he had an intimate relationship with God. He said, worship and serve him with your whole heart and a willing mind. For the Lord sees every heart and knows every plan and thought. If you seek him, you will find him. But if you forsake him, he will reject you forever. So take this seriously. The Lord has chosen you to build a temple as a sanctuary. Be strong and do the work. Now, what we have here is a very interesting situation, because we see the development of a monarch, if you will, or a household kingdom. And the thing that's always interesting about these kinds of situations is you find that the father, the establishmentarian, often goes to great length to establish something that is worth building upon. And then oftentimes you get the sons who come along and who will not have the same reverence, the same drive, the same passion, the same conviction, because they were not a part of the development, right? They were just basically given something. And when I read verse 9, I imagine David is saying, you are given a golden situation. You only have one responsibility, and that responsibility is to take it seriously. But that's easier said than done whenever you don't have the skin in the game that the father had, which created a conviction, right, of seriousness and and reverence not only for the object that was created, but for the process of getting to where you can actually see the fulfillment of what you've labored towards. And I think sometimes we see this often. You think about ministries, you think about businesses. This is why a lot of businessmen are very hesitant about handing off their businesses to their children, because they understand that the value of working towards something is not something that you inherit. It's something you learn. It's something that you experience. And if not experienced, then you sometimes are not able to see the significance of contributing yourself or contributing towards something that has required a tremendous amount of sacrifice. So what I see him giving here is the advice that is needed to maintain something that has been completely handed over to Solomon. And as long as he could do that, then they'll be just fine. In verse 11, 12, and the other verses, you see that he's given the plans for every aspect of this temple. And in chapter 29, there are gifts given. Lots of gifts. If you look at verse 4, you can see there was 112 tons of gold donated, 262 tons of refined silver. You can see that in verse 7, there was also 180 tons of gold, 10,000 gold coins. It's just resources coming out of everywhere. And it's mainly because of the way David handed this off to Solomon. You see, David made it very clear that Solomon was the one to carry out this dream. And because of the love that people had for David, they were able to join the leadership of Solomon with great support. And that could be a blessing and a cursing. We'll see, but when we read in the second book of Chronicles, we'll get to see just the position that this young man is in and how he embraces it. And he obviously will make his share of mistakes, but ultimately he seemingly embraces it with the right mentality, which is, you can't ask for anything more, at least in the initial beginning of this responsibility. You can't really ask for more than that. But one thing I found also interesting was the psalm that we read today. And I never read this psalm this way until this year. Never really put it together this way. The 127th psalm is not written by David. It is written by Solomon. And it is a psalm of ascent. He takes after his father. His father writes about the significance of journeying to Jerusalem, this sacred city that is to be reverenced as the home, the dwelling place of God. And it is concerned with the longevity, with the significance of the temple as separated from the man. So when Solomon thinks about the temple, he does not think about it as the thing that my father built. He thinks about it as the institution that God himself is building, because unless he builds it, it will not last. In other words, this psalm is expressing that it's not good enough for my dad to just hand this off to me. It's not good enough for my dad to simply give me the resources and the blueprints and the plans and the people. His support and his idea of this is not significant enough to ensure that what we are building will last. What he's saying is everything that we're building must be in the mind of God. And if it is in the mind of God, then it will last. This is what he means. Unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. It is useless for you to work so hard. Catch this, from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. I think about this. I think about the cessation of ministries, the secession of ministries as handed down to children, et cetera, et cetera. And I often wonder whether we are taking into consideration the beauty of what we're reading in these first two verses. It is Solomon's understanding that this is only going to work because God has ordained it. This is not because I'm just the next person in line and my dad had a great idea. This is a matter of, this was God's plan. Remember, it was God's idea to put Solomon on the throne. It wasn't David's. I believe if David would have heard a different idea from God, he would have went with that. David did not suggest Solomon. God suggested Solomon, which is why in verse 3, it makes all the more sense. Children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. Children born to a young woman are like arrows in a warrior's hand. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. You see, Solomon is understanding that the blessing of all of this is that David had a son to give this to, right? And if you understand the circumstances, this is a very interesting, ordeal, considering whose child Solomon is, right? This is Bathsheba's son. So you step back for a moment and you see how he's at least thinking through this situation backwards, as to say, God did not give David a son and then promise him a kingdom, but rather, if you can think of it this way, God promised David a kingdom and gave him a son. And blessed are the men whose quiver is full, so that they can delegate or give to their very own household what God has ordained from the beginning. Do you see the point of 127? And you just see how he's just kind of like thinking about this backwards and then walking into what is the real essence of the moment. So Psalm 127 is incredibly beautiful. I found it to be significant as I read through it this year. Didn't get to see that last year, the years before. So this is why we read. We keep reading, so that we can have our understanding of God's word even more illuminated in our hearts. So let me know what you're thinking. Leave some feedback. Give me your thoughts in the comment box. I would love to hear them. Again, thank you for watching. Until next time, take care, God bless, and remember, live by the word.